Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Awakened and Alive After 40 podcast. Dominique and I are so excited about today's episode because we have a guest on who, for me, this is a little bit of a full circle moment because when I first started learning and studying about the Enneagram, I decided I needed to have a typing session done. And she is the Enneagram expert who did my typing session. This was 3 years ago, I believe. And even at that time, I did not know she was going to be the one to do my typing session because I signed up through my Enneagram certification program for the typing session. And I didn't know she was working with Christy, my Enneagram teacher. And when I saw that she was going to be the one doing my typing session, I had a little bit of like a celebrity moment because for me, she was like an Instagram celebrity because I had been following her for so long. But we are so excited to welcome Gabrielle Westbrook onto our podcast today. She is one of my favorite people to follow on social media. She is a wealth of wisdom and information, and we are so excited to talk with her because both Dominique and I have discovered so many similarities that we all have. And the first one is that we are all three projectors in human design, which is super exciting because when projectors get together, I think we all just connect very easily.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And on top of that, we both, Gabrielle and I, share the same profile, 1-3. And Carrie, you've got the one in there. And we've talked so much about how we just really thrive off of knowledge and learning. And so, with all of us here having probably quite a few certifications thrown in the mix, this is just going to be such great conversation. And we had Christy on not too long ago. So this is exciting for me to just kind of see the people that you've really been mentored through in your life, Carrie. And Gabrielle is one of those that you've talked so fondly of. So I'm so incredibly grateful to have you here today, Gabrielle. So welcome.
Thank you. What an introduction. I'm like blushing over here. No, that was so sweet. And I laugh because, a lot of my Carrie, what you said, just like finding me on Instagram, that's how I meet all of my clients and the people that join my membership program and things. And so it's just funny to hear that. I'm like, I'm just me. I don't know. It's just really funny to hear. So anyways, I'm excited to be here.
It is a
Yeah,
fun
I'm sure
one.
people on Instagram don't realize that people sort of see them as these quote unquote celebrity figures. But it's like you feel like you get to know these people, but they have no idea who you are. And so it's this interesting dynamic when you actually sort of meet the people in real life or through technology or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. But
Now, have you guys met in real life or
no.
just
Well, just the
so
typing section.
that? Okay, yeah, because Carrie and I have never met in real life in person,
Yes.
which we
Yeah.
laugh
Never.
about. We think it's pretty fantastic, but it just show like the connection that you can, create with individuals across the world
Yeah.
with this technology and social media. Yeah, I certainly have things I don't like about it, but what a beautiful thing. Like we're all here connecting at this level.
We are also excited today to talk to Gabrielle specifically about her very powerful, interesting niche way of coaching and what she coaches in. So, first, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about your professional background and
Mhm.
what led you onto your coaching path that you're currently doing now.
Yeah. It's a full circle thing for me because I was an athlete my whole life. I went to college for exercise physiology. Like I was just very much into like the physical body realm of, and I got into personal training. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, so I started with personal training, but I ended up really loving it. And um, I would go to women's home. I had my own business. I would go to women's home and train them in their homes. And I loved it. And I just saw what I really loved about it was the connection piece, like the talking about the things and also seeing the women transform. I really, really loved that too. But over a couple years of doing that, I got to this place where I was at that point certified as a postpartum fitness specialist. And so I really had this, I want to work with moms. I want to help them like recover their sense of self as they are, moving into motherhood. And at that point, I was thinking like, okay, I'd want to start a podcast and all these things. And I was like, but I wouldn't want to talk about fitness in this podcast. I'd want to talk about like the real life things, and not that fitness isn't real life, but you know what I mean? Like just the deeper things. And I also started to realize with my clients, like they'd be in amazing shape, but they still felt like shit about themselves. And I'm like, I can't train that out of them with fitness. And so anyways, it kind of just sent me on this, like, just paying attention to all of that, noticing all of that. And then we moved to Austin, and 2 months into living here, I broke my leg. I had I couldn't walk for 3 months. I had 2 surgeries. It was like a complete shift of my life. Like I was so used to training and fitness and all these things, and I was just on a couch. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what do I do with this? And I just remember thinking like, okay, you have yourself and you have your journal. What are you going to do with this time? Because you can't go anywhere, can't do anything. And so that kind of, I had learned about the Enneagram like maybe a year before that time. And so I was just like really diving deep into that. Gotten an email of like, hey, I have this from Beth McCord where I got my certification. Hey, I'm starting another round of Enneagram certification. And I was just like, all right, let's try that. And so anyways, that's kind of what led me into then going on the path that I'm on now, where I got certified as an Enneagram coach. And I always knew I wanted to use that. I didn't want that to be like the main thing that I did, but I knew that I wanted to use that within really the coaching that I always wanted to do, was helping women heal like the deeper pain, the emotional trauma, inner child work. Anyways, I kind of just took one step after the other with that, and got new certifications along the way, and started my coaching business in 2020, March of 2020. That's kind of led me to today.
Wow, that is fascinating. It's so, as I'm listening to you, Gabrielle, so much of it sounds very similar to my own path into coaching as a physical therapist assistant that has been working with patients for 20 years now, and reaching a point where I was noticing patients were coming to me not only, of course, because of the physical ailments and situations they were dealing with, but the emotional support that they were craving and in need of, and weren't getting it from doctors or their loved ones, or even, from other therapists in the clinic. So I found that there was this theme of my patients coming to me and really just needing more of the emotional support to help them through the process. And then that's when I started thinking like, wow, okay, I want to do more than
Yeah.
just the physical therapy side, the just physical health side of things. I want to help people process what I came to realize was a lot of unresolved trauma, a lot of disconnect within the household, and needing a safe space to express themselves. Uh, so that's fantastic. I love that. It kind of sounds like a similar path, and a very beautiful one.
Yeah, and I realized I said at the beginning like a full circle moment, and I didn't follow up on that, but that full circle moment for me was like I remember learning about the nervous system, the brain, the body, but it was more on the anatomy side. It was more on the
Yeah.
exercise physiology side. And now over the years have somatic trauma therapy, somatic parts work, and like really getting into the somatic work, the nervous system work, polyvagal theory, like all these things from the emotional healing side of things.
Yeah.
And that is what lights me up so much. And that was the missing piece that I didn't have, that I have now, so like you said, that deeper
Yeah,
support.
yeah. And I love seeing that it's coming around more into the health field now too, because I still work in the clinic, and I have patients coming in saying like, yeah, so I've been hearing about vagus nerve, and I've been working on vagus nerve regulation with patients. I do the polyvagal theory at work as well. But
Yeah.
I incorporate a lot of it because people, doctors, practitioners are coming around to understanding that connection. There's no separation to the mind and body. Like it is
Right.
one. And that just really lights me up. I get excited to see that now in the healthcare field being spoken
Yeah,
about more.
I bet. I bet it's needed for sure.
Yeah.
It's so interesting also that both of you are Enneagram type nines and you both, which is a body type in the centers of intelligence, and you both gravitated early in your career decision making toward body centered careers. And then you both realized you wanted more, which I think part of the Enneagram type nine growth path is just this sort of sense of enlightenment. I always see type nines who are really in a good space, like as these really sort of guru like enlightened people. And that's sort of how I see both of you, that you're both on this path toward that. And it's just really, really fascinating to me that body types tend to love working in body centered fields.
Yeah. I I get chills when you say that because I feel so seen when you say that. I'm like, yes,
Mm.
it's like it's
Mhm.
so true. It's so real. I see that with a lot of other type nines as well. And I don't know if Dominique, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's like it's almost been like I've had to like really work through the shame of like wanting to be in that space, or because I think like you said, Carrie, we start out in these bodied centered kind of fields, but it seems like kind of commonplace, normal, like, oh, this is like the only option I really have. And then being able to expand, and when you grow and you're start, especially as a nine, really reclaiming your sense of self, and then you see these other more niche, a little bit more hidden, not as accepted topics that we want to dive into. It's like I really had to wrestle with just coming to acceptance of like doing it, even if I wasn't getting the positive affirmation back for those things.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean about that too, Gabrielle. But right away it makes me think that as projectors, or in quantum language, orchestrators, we're here to see things that others don't see. We're
Yeah.
here to see the new ways, the healthier ways of doing things, the outside of the box way of doing things. And that's how I felt like when I was starting to talk about like, hey, vagus nerve, nervous system regulation in my clinic. And people are like, what? Isn't that like, what's all this woo-woo stuff you're talking about? I'm like,
Right.
no, no, legit. Like you have to start with body before you can move on from there into, mind, muscle activity, anything like that. It's in the nervous system first.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was alone a lot of the times because I just saw these things that other people weren't catching on to yet. And as a physical therapy assistant, I was like, I can't start a coaching business. This is all I know. Like
Mhm.
PTA, that's it. How do I do a coaching business? And so I made a lot of excuses, just not knowing any better for a long time until
Right.
I realized, like, okay, wait a minute. No, I need to be someone to start this conversation, to be one of the few right now. And it's tough, right? It's tough knowing something is so true and so right, and not having everyone else see that just yet.
Yeah, just speaking to that projector soul, because that feeling is so deep, and that feeling is can be so painful, um the what you said about we're supposed to be the thinkers outside of the box and the guides to that thing. And when you're not getting when especially as a nine, when you already don't have a strong foundation in your sense of self, and then you're not getting that from other people, it can feel like, oh, I just need to shut this down. This isn't good. This isn't like right. This isn't
Yeah.
this is going to make me lose connection with these people, and
Yeah.
I would die if that happened. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll get into it shortly, but within your body graph, there's a lot that kind of connects to that. And how that
Let's
that
talk.
makes sense, that feeling of the fear and being without connection or support and direction and belonging. So yeah, we'll get into that more.
Yes, that's been a huge
Gabrielle,
thing.
we also wanted to ask because I think that your particular niche right now is so needed and important in the coaching community, and that is your work with women who have experienced betrayal trauma. and just maybe speak a little bit about that, why this work is so important to you, why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, it is a topic that feels like such a big part of my purpose, because I feel like when I speak about betrayal, when I have experienced it, gone through it myself, I wasn't getting the help. I did not feel seen. I did not feel understood. And so, yeah, a little bit, just won't dive too deep, but a little bit is I experienced betrayal trauma myself. And when I say there's so many forms of betrayal, right? But when I speak and what I went through and what I work with, when I work with women, it's sexual betrayal trauma. So that's if you've ever experienced in a relationship, a romantic relationship, when your partner has either had a physical affair, an emotional affair, porn addiction, sex addiction, love addiction, and they act outside of your relationship and betray you. So I went through that with my husband, and he has a porn addiction and a sex addiction. And so that played a huge part in our early marriage, our early relationship, early marriage. And I felt so crazy. I felt so, there were things that I just didn't know that were happening behind the scenes. And I felt like if I did open up to anyone, it was just kind of like pity, which I hated, or it was like, um, just they didn't know how to respond. Or even if I went to like a professional, it was kind of like, well, you're codependent. So you're the reason why you keep hitting your head off the same wall. And I was just like, oh my God, like it was the most crazy making experience. And I walked through that for like 5 years, married, and 2 years like before that. Um, and there was a lot there, like, everyone's like, why didn't you leave? And all those things, but it didn't seem bad enough, quote unquote, especially with like a porn addiction. It didn't seem bad enough. It wasn't physically cheating. And this is just what men do. And you just got to accept it. And like, there's all those narratives. And, I came to realize like, no, I don't have to accept that. And so anyways, it was shortly after I broke my leg, and I just was like, this is my life too. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to continue to be treated this way. And that was like the first time I really put my foot down and was like, no, like I need like something has to change. And I don't know if that means we're going to stay together or not. And so I kind of took this approach in my healing of, I had this visual from a video I saw from Esther Perel. I don't know if you know who she is. She does a lot of work with the infidelity space. And she had this video, and it's her TED Talk. And it was basically the last couple minutes that really spoke to me. And she said she had couples come into her office, and she said, you could get divorced and you could get into a second relationship, and you could get divorced from that relationship and get into a third relationship. But what if we could, and I'm not saying verbatim what she said, this is how I interpreted it. What if you could divorce from that relationship and create an opportunity for a second relationship together? And that was like the counterintuitive, the missing piece thing that I just was like, oh, this makes sense. And so from there, I had this visual of this house, and this house was my marriage. And it looked great on the outside, but inside everything was cracking and breaking and leaking. And we kept trying to put all these band-aids on these things that never worked. And then when you looked deeper at it, the foundation on that actual like slab of foundation was cracked. And it's like, well, you don't keep trying to repair the same house on a cracked foundation. So what do you have to do? You have to demolish that house. You have to like tear that house down. And it doesn't mean all the memories go with it. Some of the memories you can bring with you, but you have to demolish that house. You also have to rip out the foundation. And then for me, what I kind of took from that is like, then we each have to stand on either side of our plot to say like, I'm going to pull out my wreckage, you're going to pull out your wreckage, and we're going to do that individual work for some time. We're not going to make a decision to stay or go yet. We're just going to stay in this container, but we're going to become safer. We're going to become healthier, healing people. And then at that point, we're going to say, okay, do we want to pour another foundation together? Do we want to build another house together or not? And so that's kind of the path. Like that literally set the trajectory of what our healing was. And that's the approach that I take with my clients, because it just adds the nuance and the gray space and the complexity that this kind of topic really deserves, because it's not as simple as just stay or go. That brings way more anxiety to women
Yeah.
than, and in my theory and my approach is it's different for every single person, and it's so nuanced, and there is a lot that you have to learn in that time of about yourself. And that's a lot of what I help women do is like, I want you to know that I want you to come to know and believe that you will be okay no matter what happens to the relationship. The relationship's a byproduct. Let's start inwardly, is that a word? Inner,
Mm-hmm.
in your inner self first. So yeah, that's kind of, I went through that, and now I help women, but with the somatic and the nervous system approach, because obviously this is trauma that we're dealing with. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. That was a lot, sounds
Yeah.
like. A lot
Yeah.
to work through, and to yeah, the rebuilding. Like you said, it looks different for everyone.
Mhm.
And so there's no one way to do it. There's no right way or wrong way. There's just your way, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
I got
Yeah.
chills while you were talking because I love hearing type nines step into their anger and their power. And that is what you did. You took control of your life. You realize I have anger that needs to be expressed, and I have power to create the life I want and deserve.
Yes. Yeah, that
Yeah.
anger piece, especially, I mean, that's why I like using the Enneagram in my coaching, is because anger is going to look different for all the different types. But speaking as a nine personally, yes, that piece of it was the key, honestly. Like, there's so much repressed anger, and I had to actually face it and encounter it and dance with it and sit with it and let it flow, let it rip. And then how also, not worrying about if it was the healthy way to express it, just expressing it.
Mhm.
And then over time, learning how to do it with more choice and intention. But I couldn't do that piece until I let it rip first.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear if so if any of our listeners right now are like, oh my gosh, this sounds like me. Like I'm in this boat right now. What would you advise someone on for that first step toward this
Yeah.
whole process if they are wanting to seek some sort of change and assistance in their own life?
Yeah. Oof, this is tough, just because it does really vary on that person's situation. But I would say, like, without a doubt, no matter what the situation is, you have to get support, whether it's therapy. I would recommend working with someone who specializes in like partners of betrayal, or even is like my previous therapist that I worked with was a CSAT, a certified sex addiction therapist, but she also
Mhm.
was a partner of betrayal. So she had the knowledge of what the betrayer's going through, but also working with the partners too. Just someone who specializes in the partner of betrayal work.
Mhm.
If you're not ready for therapy, get into a support group. I didn't even know these things existed, but support groups for partners of betrayal do exist. I run one now. I felt so
Beautiful.
alone for so long, and it
Mhm.
was like that was the first step I took. And
Mhm.
now I run one. So I would just say get support in whatever way you can, not just friends and family, because friends and
Yeah.
family aren't gonna know. They're not. And also they're gonna have different bias and different opinions, and like that also just, yeah. So that would be the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say is, um, well, I would also couple with that, make sure you're seeing someone who like is willing to understand you, and don't just go with the first person you go with. And um because there can be a lot of re-injury there. So just make sure you
Mhm.
like get choosy with who you
Mhm.
see and who you get support with. The second thing I would say is, as best as you can, slow down everything in your life. Like, I know some women can't. I know some women feel like they can't, in terms of like, I have kids, I have a job, like these things. And yes, but are there other plates? Like maybe you're used to being the friend that is always so supportive with your friends. Maybe that's not your season right now, right? Maybe it's not your season to be volunteering and all the things that maybe you want to do. Maybe it's just, and there's some grieving there, but as best as you can, stop all the unnecessary spinning plates. Slow down without guilt, without shame, and give yourself some time, some breathing room, and some space. And I would say like those two are probably foundationally the most important
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree. And I like to say like date your therapist, like or potential therapist.
Yeah.
There's so many times I've come across someone, they're like, yeah, I started going to therapy. I don't know if it's working for me. I don't think I'm going to do it anymore. And then I ask them, like, okay, how do you feel about your therapist? Like, what do you feel safe? Do you feel seen, heard? And sometimes it's like, yeah, no, not really. I'm like, okay, go to a different one. Like date around with your therapist
Yeah.
if you really need to, if you're not feeling that connection. And then the second part you mentioned, Gabrielle, I think of so Jess Massey, she is a productivity coach and someone Carrie and I really enjoy following just because she has such amazing nuggets of wisdom. She talks about as you're juggling life, glass balls and rubber balls.
Mm.
Okay. So if you're dropping a glass ball, that's going to just shatter. That's going to create complete chaos in your life. Of course, if you drop a rubber ball, like you were saying, if you're saying yes to too many like friend outings or something like that, that rubber ball drops, it's going to bounce back. Okay. So like prioritizing, if you feel like you have such a busy life and you're just keeping yourself busy and just on constant mode, kind of thinking about, all right, what are my glass balls and what are my rubber balls? And how can I shift that focus so I'm not paying so much attention to the things that don't really matter or nurture me in this season?
Yeah. And that's a big thing too, because especially as women, and especially the women that I work with, a lot of them, I mean, it really does vary, but like a lot of women do have kids, and a lot of women that I work with are stay-at-home moms too. And it's like it's even I'm like, get creative, right? Like they're like,
Mm,
well, I have to clean my house, but I have no energy. I have to do the
mhm.
laundry, but I have no energy. And I'm like, there's a shame component if they can't do these things. And so it's even the daily life things it's that I help women try to, let's think creatively. Can you hire someone to come clean your house
Yeah.
once a week, once a month, like to help you in this time, right? Like we have to think creatively, and I understand why women get so, I felt the same way, so trapped and so stuck in these cycles, because we're in either a sympathetic dominant state right now or a dorsal dominant state right now. And it's hard to think creatively in those states. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
yeah, it's really meeting women where their nervous system is at to really, figure it out for them.
What a beautiful support system you've become for so many women, it sounds like.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your group community that you've created looks amazing. And I've
Mm.
always been like, oh my gosh, if I go through anything like this, it's like the first place I would want to go, I think.
Yeah, I truly, like, I created Afterglow. This August will be 2 years of Afterglow's existence, and it's a support group and a mentorship group for women healing after betrayal, and I love it so much because it's it is such a safe community. I set very like strict boundaries and some guidelines because I didn't want it to become this like rah rah hate men, we're so angry group. I wanted it to
Mhm.
be, it's about you. It's about your healing. It's not about that. And so, yeah, I love it so much. I get to show up as myself. I'm not just the coach in the group too, which is cool. I get to like, I share a lot of what I'm going through with them, and they show up for me, which is so beautiful. And it really, yeah, it's become a very like safe anchoring, tethering thing in my life. And even the women in the community, I get a lot of feedback about that. And yeah, it's for the we don't have to feel as alone and isolated as long as I did. That's kind of why I created the groups. Of like, I was on an island for way too long unnecessarily. So it's been
Mhm.
beautiful.
I can't help but just like picture your chart in my mind right now. I would love to jump in
Let's dive
sharing your
in.
chart just because so much of these beautiful shares are hitting with what you're here to do with your life. And so, yeah, I would love to share my screen so we can take a look at your chart if that's okay with you.
Yes, let's
Yeah.
do it. I get excited about this stuff, especially as a projector. I'm like, ooh, see me. What's up?
Yeah.
What's going on underneath the surface?
Yep, you get it. So I went ahead and I pulled your chart up on a different software. So as we've already talked about, you're a projector. So you're someone who is here to not necessarily work like the standard 9 to 5 job and, just like hit that grind like so much. 70% of the population is here to actually do the physical work of creating and building our world. But as projectors, we're here to really serve those around us as guides, as support, as helping them to better use their own energy and to be smart about how we use energy. And
Mm,
so that's the first thing with being a projector is that we don't have that consistent resource of energy to keep us going all day long. We have open sacral center. Every projector has the open sacral, and that's the workforce and life force energy. So really being wise about energy is one of our gifts, and why working through shame and guilt around not having the energy to do things like you were just saying, like so many of your clients feel shameful if they don't have the ability to take care of the house, the kids, the family, like, and they find that they're feeling burnt out.
mhm,
That's very much a thing with being a projector, is being wise about it and picking your battles, picking like where to focus your attention. So that
mhm.
way you're keeping your resources and your reserve full so that you can give to others.
Yeah.
Now, with everything you're talking about with safety and connection and helping women through processing the shame and fears, that brings my attention right here to the spleen center, which is the bottom left. You have it completely open. Our
Mhm.
open centers are where we absorb energy from others and amplify it. So we
Right.
feel things more intensely than someone who might have a defined center. And the spleen center is all about well-being, all about the nervous system, the sense of safety and connection with others.
Mm,
Timing is also another one. The shadow side could be holding on to things for too long, and that could be
mm,
like physical items, relationships, feelings, beliefs. So when we're stuck in the shadow side of the spleen, it's the inability to let things go, and that can come with a lot of fears and anxieties because
yeah.
of being fearful of, what if I don't have enough? What could the future hold for me? What if I repeat the past? What if I fail? These are
Mhm,
all kind of the gates that we see here. But with you
mhm,
having that completely open spleen, you are here to guide others through releasing fears. Your wisdom is in this center. And what makes you such a beautiful coach is because you know fear, you know anxiety, you know what it is to have this sense of something not being right for you because you feel it so deeply and you have over the years. So your gift is now to guide others through releasing these things and processing these strong emotions with anxieties and fears.
mm.
How does that resonate with
Yeah,
you?
I feel like you just read my journal
Oh,
of like what has
yeah.
happened in my over the span of my life, the really
Mm-hmm.
the deep things that I've had to navigate and even still, I mean, even still wrestle with.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it like was a joke as a little girl. It was like a joke of like, oh, her middle name's Worry, like
Mm,
and
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've always struggled with such intense fear of
Mm,
a lot of it being about self-preservation, a lot of it being about safety. And it was, you said timing, and I'm kind of curious
yeah.
what you mean by timing.
So with the spleen center, what they say is that if it's open, then we have a more fluid sense of timing. So that can be like being super late to places, or because you're aware that you could be late, you're super early, So it's like you try to
Right.
be aware of timing with certain things because you know that it's kind of all over the place. It's not this hard sense. Like if I looked at the clock right now, I would probably be surprised that it was 11:50 because it feels later to me. Like I have an open spleen. So for me, that's kind of how my spleen is. I don't
Yeah.
have much awareness of time. And I also have been diagnosed with ADD. But
Mm.
with the spleen center, that's kind of that awareness. And someone who has a defined spleen center often has a better connection to time itself. And also, when we think of time, it's instinctual, right? The spleen is the instincts. And so, if it's open, we have such variety, variation to it. So, if
Yeah.
something is like pinging us in the moment, we may be like, oh, maybe that was, yeah, that thing. And maybe it wasn't. And we kind of let the moment go by.
Mhm.
Whereas oftentimes with a defined spleen, they're much more aware of in the moment. We're kind of
Mhm.
all more all over the place, flowing with time.
Yeah. Okay. That resonates a lot with me. I think for me, and it was that word really stuck out to me. For me, a big struggle in my life is I'm constantly trying to figure out like what's the best time to do things like in my day,
Mm.
like
Hmm.
chronological time ordering of like
Hmm.
what makes the most sense. And but it like causes a lot of stress and aggravation and conflict inside of me. So anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really hear people talking about that often, so
Yeah.
I was
And that
worked
could
up.
be potentially like your way of feeling in control of the timing of things in your life. If
True.
there is a fear around that or a discomfort around like the unknown,
Mm,
potentially. So it could be, part of that too. But
yeah.
you also have here, we mentioned the open sacral center, which we all have as projectors. And so this means that we can oftentimes work harder than generators because we're absorbing and amplifying that energy. But because it's
Mm,
not ours to hold on to, that's when we can be at greater risk for burning ourselves out and having some pretty serious health issues because of that.
yeah.
So the other two centers, the will center, this tiny triangle, and the G center, this is where the heart chakra split and became two separate centers.
Mm,
And so the will center is all about self-worth, self-value.
mm,
So with someone who has an open will center, the potential, the shadow side could be trying to do as much as you can and be somebody different or prove your worthiness and value.
yeah. Yep.
Therefore, sometimes burning yourself out because you're putting others first, or you're just in this mode of needing to prove yourself to feel of value.
Yeah, that's been a big theme in my life for sure.
Yeah. And again, because that's wide open, just like the spleen, that's where through your experiences and through your growth, like that's where your power is, that now you get to help people through their process. Like you
Yeah.
have so much wisdom of your experience, experiential learning over the
Mm.
years, that's your gift now to give to others. It seems oftentimes, sometimes, like when you're in it, of course, you're just like, why? But with that strength and with that knowledge and experience you've gained, like that's now your powerhouse there.
Yeah.
That's the beauty about open centers. And with your G center, that's our center for love, direction, connection to self. This is also where something called the magnetic monopole resides, and this is what attracts our experiences into our life.
Mm,
So if we find ourselves as pure value because we exist, if we see the value in ourselves and know that we don't have to prove ourselves, and then we find that, hey, I'm lovable for just being me. When we vibrate this energy of pure love and acceptance, this is when we start to pull those experiences into our lives with that
mm,
magnetic monopole residing here in the G center. So you're really here to help guide women through, whether it's their purpose or a direction in life with the G center, to find the value and worthiness and their just inherent being. They were born with that. It's nothing to earn or nothing that you need to acquire over time. And then with the spleen center, being strong to release things that are no longer serving you, to work through the fears and anxiety, to feel them. Like, that's the important thing too. It's with the spleen, they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. And with the nervous system work you're doing, you're helping them to find safety in their body so they can push through the different fears that come about from the gates in the spleen here. And all while they're nurturing their energy, they're nurturing their life force, and knowing that it's okay to rest. You're allowed to. This is what is going to help you through all of the process, through the grief, the trauma, resolving everything that builds up over the years of going through the things like you went through, Gabrielle, and what you help women through.
Yeah. Well, that was so beautifully said. And I'm so glad this is recorded so that I could come back and listen to that often, because I'm going to, even, parts of me, especially as a 9, like seeing myself in this way, it's hard sometimes. And it's almost like that part of me kind of anesthetizes it a little bit. And like you said, like that part, what's the self-value, the self,
the will center there.
yes, that part being
Self-worth
completely
and
wide
value.
open.
Yeah, absolutely. Like seeing, I'm glad that this resonates for you. And I know I spent a good time here, so I want to just chat like real quick about your profile, because you're a 1-3. I'm a 1-3, and the 1-3 is known as the like resource, the knowledge seeker, the one being just really, you dive deep into the topics that you're passionate about. My mentor says that the internet was created for the ones out there. I don't know about you, but I'm like, ooh, I want to learn more about this. Let me hop online and see what Google has to say.
Of
Carrie,
course,
I know
yes.
like you're the same with you having a 1 as well. So like these topics, whether it's nervous system regulation, and you're like, you know what, I need to learn more about this. So you dive down the rabbit hole. And then the 3 is all about the explorer in the quantum language, because it's known as the martyr and traditional, which I think that's a horrible word to describe the 3, because we're here to then take that knowledge and experiment with it. You don't know if something's going to work for you or for others until you try it.
Right.
Then you get to decide, like, okay, you know what? This really makes a difference. I want to share this with the world now.
Yeah.
And so that 1-3, I've grown to really love that about myself. Whereas, with the 3, we can often feel like guilt or blame or shame about messing up, making mistakes. And there are no mistakes for the 3. There's only lessons.
Yeah. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like I told you, I'm working with Amy Lee for business coaching, and she's a projector. She works with projectors. And so I've been diving into this specific piece a lot in my coaching. And her motto for me right now is fuck around and find out, because I get so caught up in the perfectionism and is this right? Is this wrong? And then I end up freezing and I end up not doing anything. So that 3 piece of me is like, I think really not developed. I think there's a fear there. I think there's this, oh no, am I going to make a mistake? Oh no, what if this fails? Oh no, what if I'm seen? Oh no, what if I succeed? Right? Like there's all of that side of it too. So yeah, I'm trying, she has been helping me to see like being messy, like allowing myself to be messier is going to be a lot of my growth in this piece.
It's so hard though, isn't it?
It's
hard, but it's so much truth to that. And then with the 1, the shadow side of the 1 is the fear of not knowing enough.
Yeah. Oof.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got fear of not knowing, and then the 3, fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
So talk about like being in a freeze
Conundrum.
state,
Yes.
perfectionism, right? And then on top of that, you got that open spleen. So you're feeling all of the fears a lot more intensely.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of, we have conundrums in the chart that we like to say. So, that's what you're here to learn. Like, this is one of the big lessons that you're here to learn is
Yeah.
to know it's okay to make mistakes, to feel the fear and do it anyway, to be able to push through that by creating safety within your nervous system and regulating it and teaching others to do the same.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would love Carrie to chime in on this one because you both have the same conscious sun, the gate 23, which in the quantum language is known as the gate of transmission. In traditional language, it's the gate of assimilation. And
Mm.
so the 23, just kind of in a nutshell, is you're here to simplify complex topics.
Mm.
You're here to make things that especially when it comes to the body, like how many everyday individuals are familiar with the body and the role of the nervous system and all of that juicy stuff that we love. So you simplify it for them so that they can better understand and not be so fearful potentially in ways of what comes with not understanding the body and why they're experiencing things that they are experiencing.
Mm.
So I would love, I'm just so curious to know between you, Gabrielle, and Carrie, how that 23 plays out. Because the conscious sun, that's where everything else in the chart funnels up and through it. So it's this expression of just simplifying things in your life and trusting that you're gonna know what you need to know when you need to know it.
Mm.
And it's a teaching gate. It's a feeling, a need to feel heard. You're full of great ideas, but it's all around timing, especially as a projector, being
Mm.
recognized and invited to share. So you've got all this knowledge, all this amazingness in your head and in your experience to share, but it's also waiting for the right people to recognize it before
Yeah.
you can share it with those who are ready to hear what you have to say. So how does that play out in your life, Gabrielle? How does that feel?
The biggest example that comes to mind, and I'm just going to share this because it's the way that I can explain it the best. But when I started healing after betrayal, I didn't know all the polyvagal theory stuff. I wasn't certified in it. I wasn't knowledgeable about it. Like I literally had no idea about it. And so I think this came about so organically and naturally. And that's when I find that um anyways, that's what I love about this part of me is because there are these things that I inherently know and then I learn about them later in like a text or something and I'm like, "Oh my gosh. This is what I've been saying. This is what I know." So my example
Yes.
is before I even knew all of this, when I was like the first 3 months after betrayal and I'm learning how to like I'm like frantic, sympathetic, fight or flight, like trying to figure out what just blew up in my life. And I was also fighting actually slowing down. I was fighting like the depression that I was really feeling from this massive eruption in my life. And I had someone reflect that back to me, like, maybe you are depressed. Like maybe you do need to slow down. And I was like, okay. So I was like navigating that. Anyways, I remember it was after my second leg surgery. So I'm sitting on the couch again. I had this thought of, okay, I like if I'm a sliding scale vertically, like I want to feel here. I want to feel high. I want to feel all the good, positive, fun emotions, but I'm feeling really low right now. I'm feeling embarrassed, ashamed, like awful, low energy, fatigue. But while I'm here, I'm putting on guilt and I'm putting on shame and I'm putting on shoulds and supposed tos. And so while I'm piling all this stuff on myself while I'm already low, there's no room. I'm always going to come up against that. There's no room for me to even go up to the positive feeling emotions. And so I realized in that moment, okay, while I'm low, I'm not going anywhere. So I got to start taking off the guilt, got the shame, the shoulds, the supposed tos, the blame. And I need to just let myself be here in order to naturally, organically move up to where I want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
it's what I'm essentially explaining is polyvagal theory. And I
Yeah.
had no idea that
Wow.
was a thing. And I actually just like moved through it myself. So I like had this simplified kind of download, if you will. I moved through it myself. I found that it works. And then like 2 years later, learned about it in the more scientific researched sense. And it just was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, this has always happened in my life. I
Mhm.
love that about me. And I'm really good at explaining it, and women understand it really well in that way. And I don't even have to go into, this is polyvagal theory and let's, fill out the textbook stuff. And
Yeah.
um anyways, so that's a big example of how that kind of plays out in my life.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that you take the polyvagal theory, that knowledge, and put it into language that is just simply like language of explaining how someone can move
Yeah.
through things without them knowing, like, oh, this is science and this is complex. And how am I going to remember all of this or learn this? So yeah, there you go. That's awesome. And with Carrie and I joke that I get a little bit out there sometimes with my conversation, and I love how she can reel it in and simplify it on the
Mm.
podcast when I do start getting more into quantum language. And we talked about this recently, but Carrie, when it comes to like your side, like in the Enneagram world and what you've done in your professional life, how does that gate 23 feel to you?
Yeah, like Gabrielle was saying, I really, really felt it when I worked in public education as a speech pathologist because we had meetings all the time where we're speaking to parents and they don't understand all the nitty-gritty details of the theory or the disability that their child has been diagnosed with or whatever it may be. And I found that my role in all these meetings was always like speaking to a level and in a way that the parents heard and could digest and absorb, but also they felt super supported through it. And whatever teams I worked on would always comment on that about my style of communication during that time and just how well I could simplify this crazy document that we're going over with all of this jargon and lingo in it. And I could just get it down to the basics that the parents needed to hear. And so I think, and this is before I knew about human design. So I think I've always heard, we need to not try to live our purpose or try to live our incarnation cross.
Mhm.
We just have to allow ourselves to do what feels natural. Like Gabrielle was saying, this wasn't something she set out to try to do. And it's so funny. Gabrielle and I both have three defined channels in our charts, and two of the three for us are the same. And one of those is the 2343 channel, which is known
Yeah.
by Dominique, what is it?
Yeah.
Genius to freak or
So
freak to
yeah, it's a
genius?
freak. Yes, yeah, and that's the connection of the ajna to the throat here. So you're here to speak your mind, but
And just hearing
yeah.
Gabrielle say that this is like a knowing channel where
Hmm.
you just know something and you don't know how you
Yep.
know it. And
Yep.
you just knew
Yep.
polyvagal theory before you learned it. And
Hmm.
if you had maybe tried to describe it to some people, they would have been like, Gabrielle, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Thinking you sounded freakish. But then other people who maybe invited you or were wanting to hear it or needing to hear it would see you as having this genius idea.
Right.
Hmm. Yep.
Good point.
So well explained, Carrie. See, and that's what
Yeah.
I love it because yes, that's where that connection is for sure of speaking your mind. And lastly, just so we can kind of move on, I got a couple other questions for you, Gabrielle.
Mhm.
You also have your authority as an emotional
Yeah.
authority. So through the 1949 connection, and that means that you are not meant to make decisions like right on the spot. The best way to
Mhm.
make decisions is by feeling through them, allowing the emotional wave, which for you and Carrie, because you both have this wave, is kind of small, undulating changes within how you're feeling day to day, week
Mhm.
to week. And so, ideally, if something is presented to you and you're trying to make a decision on it and you've got this strong like yes initially, give it some time, give it a day, 2 days, because no matter what your mood is, whether you're on a great mood one day and then a low mood, you still want it to feel like a yes. And that's
Mhm.
how you know something is going to be right for you. If it's kind of like yes one day and then you're like, nah, I don't think that's going to be right for me, then ideally that's where you want to kind of pull back and reconsider. But the emotional wave is something that is all about waiting things out, feeling through it. And nobody likes to wait. Like every single one of us, when it comes to the chart, is designed to wait and process decisions besides the sacral response, which is a quick, like in the moment. But for you, that's how your authority works as an emotional authority.
Mhm. Yeah, that was something I was shamed about a lot in my life, just being so indecisive and being so, well, indecisive to the world's
Mm-hmm.
outlook on it, right? I was something I was definitely shamed about, and I had a lot of pressure on me to make decisions quickly, and and also like different guardrails were put up for me. I wasn't allowed to just like do how I do, and so I learned how to kind of I don't feel like I really learned my emotional wave until like the last few years of like allowing it to be what it actually is meant
Yeah.
to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's something I still kind of battle with, but I am getting better. And I think even going back to that or the question right before this of like your body, like I firmly now know that like your body will always tell you when it's time, when it's ready, when in the next thing, or when to stop something. And I think for me now it's kind of been learning my emotional wave through that process, and also really believing myself now, whereas
Mm-hmm.
before I wasn't really allowed, or that skill wasn't developed. I didn't have the space to develop that skill. But I've always known it's within me. And so it's now just giving myself the permission and the space to get in touch with it. So it's been a journey of allowing
Yeah.
myself to be as I am. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so true. And Carrie and I have talked, just regarding her emotional wave, that it's not judging what's coming up for you, just simply allowing it to be what it is. And what I love about quantum human design is that as an emotional being with these waves, that's your mode to creativity, to
mhm,
creation. And it's through, I mean, you think about all the writers and poets and artists out there, how some of their best work is done in the melancholy, in the depths of their sadness. And so it's kind of allowing it to be, and being a screen and not a sponge
yeah,
is another one. Just observing, feeling, letting it pass, and then tapping in and asking yourself, okay, how do I feel now? Like,
yeah,
what did I learn from that? How did I grow from that? Or yeah, it's a beautiful thing, but
yeah,
challenging, like you said. Yeah, when we've never been taught that it's okay to feel differently from how others feel, or even to have that connection to your body.
totally. And I also think as an Enneagram 9, just because that's where my expertise lies, it's like when I think about that, not even for me, it was as big as like I didn't even know I had a sense of self. And so like even that, it's like so much energy to constantly have to check in with myself. Like you said, like, how do I feel about it now? Well, have it, it's like
Mhm.
it's been draining to learn how to do that for
Yeah.
myself. And so sometimes I don't, sometimes I'm not good at it even now. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a lifelong process for
Oh,
me.
absolutely. Yeah, I know I'm definitely one of those lifelongers too. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really quickly before we wrap up, we love asking our guests on our podcast about just to discuss a couple of their core values, because core values is a topic that comes up on a lot of our episodes. Dominique and I love discussing them. So, Gabrielle, if you could just let us know a couple of your core values at this point in your life, because we talk about how they can be always changing with the season of life that we're in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I did. I don't know if you guys know of Lacey Phillips. She runs To Be Magnetic.
Mm.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I've been a
yeah.
member of her membership program since 2019. And so she has this journaling practice I was telling you about. She has this thing called oh, what does she call it? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, it's basically to like get down to the root of like what are your core values right now, and you can do it every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. I usually do it once a year and see if they've changed, or if I want to add some, take some out. So anyways, it's authentic code. That's what she calls it, your authentic code.
Ooh,
So right
awesome.
now in my life, my authentic code, it's basically 4 pillars, and I have some like definitions for each of them. But my first one is health. So physical wellness, healthy food, making sure I have the right doctors in my life, different wellness services, things like that. So health, number one. Number two, emotional wellness. So this consists of healing trauma, feeling regulated, able to connect with myself and connect with others. The third one is expansion. So for me, what this means is freedom to be myself, freedom to feel seen and understood, possibilities, opportunities, being my version of creative. And then lastly, my fourth pillar is comfort. And what I mean by this is rest, luxury, slow, feeling good in my body, feeling good in my clothes, inner child feeling at home, and feeling safe in my relationships.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Maybe we can link that in the show notes if
Yeah.
you're able to, yeah, provide us with a way that our listeners can maybe find their way to this exercise. That would be awesome.
Yes. Yeah, it's been really impactful. Like I said, I usually do it once a year, and this last time I did it at the end of last year, and I would say these still feel really true right now.
Mhm.
And but these are all 4 very different than what my values were in 2019, 2020. So it's kind of cool to
Yeah.
see it documented and do that over your life.
Now, do you go back and look at how your core values have changed? Like you mentioned, you do some journaling. So do you ever go back, or is it just kind of like a one and done and just keep moving forward with it?
Yeah, I don't do it often, but like under my nightstand right now, I have a basket of all of my volumes of journals that I've moved through in the last 5 years, 5+ years. And sometimes I will kind of just go back and reflect, just to see what I was saying, especially like with the women that I work with in my coaching business. Like it is helpful for me that I did document so much of it, because then I can really understand things about them. So that's kind of what leads me to do it. But then I get into it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I was thinking and feeling. So yeah, I do some reflection
Oh, that's
sometimes, but it
wonderful.
also just feels like in me. I don't know, like
Hmm.
I just it's like that version, it feels close. So I
Hmm.
don't know.
Hmm.
Well, Gabrielle, we have loved talking with you today.
Me too.
And we wanted to give you the chance to let our listeners know how they can connect with you. We will put all your links in the show notes, but if you have anything going on right now or just a way if people want to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I'm on Instagram at Gabrielle Westbrook. And I also am on TikTok on it. I kind of do different content on both. So if you are someone who is, really maybe going through healing betrayal, or you don't know where to start, or you're looking for some safety and connection, TikTok's going to be the place you want to go. It's the same, just at Gabrielle Westbrook. And then on Instagram, I talk about more variety of healing topics. And right now, how people can work with me is through Afterglow, which is my support group and mentorship group. I kind of leave it as a take what you need kind of group. So you can join. It's pretty flexible. You can join as you want to. You can leave as you want to. But it's cool. It's run in a group setting. So we do 2 group calls a month. We focus on one specific topic each month to try to keep it really simple. And we sometimes have guest workshop from different experts. And just we have an amazing private community channel where like that's the magic that of the group that's where it lives. So yeah, those are mainly the 3 places that I'm at right now. I am speaking of what we talked about before, like I went through massive burnout at the end of last year. And so I've been recovering from burnout. I'm shifting my business in a lot of ways. I've been doing one-on-one coaching for the last 4.5 years, and I'm actually have, as of this month, transitioned out of that. So that's very new and very weird for me to not be promoting that right now. But yeah, we're in a transition phase, so it's exciting.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Wow, what powerful work you have done over the years, are continuing to do, and what a powerful support system you provide for those out there in need through the community and whatever you end up offering in the future. I am just thrilled to hear more about how things are transitioning for you in time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And I know Carrie and I have connected so often on Instagram. So it's so nice to meet you too, Dominique, and be able to just chat with you both. And thanks for just holding space for me to share. It's been exciting. It's been fun.
Absolutely. This is lovely. Thank you.
Thanks.